Hello, everyone. Thank you for visiting my channel, Educational Norm. I work as an educational consultant, which means that I have the opportunity to interact and visit with many teachers across Ohio and beyond. Those interactions have driven me to tell their stories and their ideas on education. The goal of Educational Norm is to provide an informational network that focuses on positive aspects of education, the people preparing students for the future of our world. Join us each week for a new interview, and please subscribe and share the channel with others that you think may enjoy the program. Thank you and enjoy the show. Good evening, everyone. Today we have Jake Miller with us. Jake is an ed tech and learning enthusiast who wrote Educational Duct Tape, an ed tech integration mindset, and hosts the Ed Tech News Brief and Educational Duct Tape podcast. Jake's day job is a personalized learning specialist, and he has previously spent the last 5 years as a technology integration specialist with an additional 14 years in the classroom teaching math, science, and STEM at various grade levels. He has an awesome wife and three funny kids, the youngest of which calls him Daddy Longlegs Spider D. Jake, welcome to Educational Norm.
Yeah, thanks, Norm. Glad to be here. I appreciate the invite. I'm excited to chat.
I am too. It's been a while, so I have to ask you about your Daddy Longlegs Spider D. What's that all about?
So, yeah, I have three kids, as you mentioned there. They are currently 15, 13, and 10. And the 10-year-old is definitely the ham of the household. And he's always been a nickname guy since he was little. And I have been Daddy Longlegs Spider D to him since he was, I don't know, 2 or 3, 4 years old, something like that. And it's exactly what it sounds like. I'm 6'4" with 5 feet of which is legs, so I'm Daddy Longlegs Spider D to him. And the D stands for dad. I don't know why there's another D in there, but at sometimes it was Daddy Longlegs Spider D Chips and Guac. I don't know why there were other names added on. It's gotten a little bit shorter, but as a 10-year old fifth grader, he still calls that to me at night, which is great. I hope he never stops.
Well, the Daddy Longlegs is actually a spider, so that D has to be there to represent you.
Right, that's the name of the spider. You're right. That's
Right.
accurate. So that daddy is for the spider, and the D is for me. I get it now.
Exactly. So, Jake, a lot of people around Ohio do know who you are, and I'm excited to have you on here tonight. And they know you as this tech guru that has this podcast and has a great book of practical uses for technology. But can you give us a little synopsis of your journey to get to where you're at now?
Yeah, so this is a year 22 in education for me, I think. I'd have to go back and tally them all up. But most of the first half of that was in classrooms teaching middle school math, science, STEM. And what I found as I went through those years was I was really excited about educational technology. First, how I could use it, and then how I could have my kids use it, and then the things I could expose them to with it in the STEM classroom. And then I found that I was so excited about that I wanted to share it with the teachers around me. And when I started presenting to the teachers in my school and things like that, I found like that was what I really loved. As much as I like tech, I really like supporting teachers, whether it's presenting to them or kind of coaching alongside them, just helping them use technology because they're such hardworking people and they care so much about their kids. And the opportunity to show them something that kind of ignites that fire for them and gets them excited and makes things easier for them. It's just always been a thrill to me. So as I discovered that, I just kept looking for new ways to do it. So first it was presenting in my own staff meetings, and then it was presenting at the district level, and then it was being on a district tech leadership team, and then it was some of the local tech conferences, which Neotech and Neotai and OETC, all these Ohio ones, doing all those things. And then I took a job at a different district as a tech integration specialist, and then somewhere around that time, I started doing work with other schools, on days that I didn't have work for my day job. I think that's where we probably first crossed paths, doing that years ago. But what I found as I went is I kept wanting to impact more and more teachers. So it went from telling my colleagues in my building about it to telling my colleagues in my district about it to telling people at a local conference about it to wanting to podcast about it to wanting to record videos about it to wanting to travel and speak about it and just write a book about it and all of these things, just really to support teachers as much as I could.
That's great, and that is where we met. You came to Twinsburg when I was working there, and you shared your knowledge. But I think what sets you apart in your field is that you give very practical solutions to teachers that they can walk out the door and feel comfortable implementing in their classroom. And I do
Yeah.
think that's what sets you apart as somebody that has sat through many trainings and gone, oh my goodness, that's a lot of information, or what are they getting at? But you are not that way at all. You're very
Oh,
to the
thank you.
point and very friendly, which I do appreciate. So I think
Yeah,
that is what sets you apart in what you do. So thank you for
thanks,
that.
man. Yeah.
Um,
I think one thing that comes to whenever I'm presenting or working with teachers, I think anybody providing professional development services, you have to lead with a lot of empathy. And if you can understand the people, sitting across the table or across the classroom from you and think about their needs in that situation and their motivations in that situation and what's going to be best for them in those situations, it's a thing that I'm sure you do when you're working with schools and things like that too. It's second nature to us because that's what we do and that's what our passion is. But it's just leading with empathy in the way we help people.
totally agree. And we're teachers. No matter who's in front of us,
Yeah.
we're teaching, and that
Hmm.
goes a long way. So with your
Hmm.
tech integration specialty, what tech is out there right now that teachers can take advantage of that may have been updated or that you see that's being used quite a bit that could help other teachers that are listening here?
Yeah. So my first advice with ed tech is always you don't have to use it all, and everybody doesn't have to use the same ones. You should be using whatever supports you in addressing your goals, your needs, solving your problems in your classroom, and doing what works best for you and your learners. That's where educational duct tape came from. It was the idea that ed tech is like a tool, just like duct tape, and so different jobs require different tools, and I'm going to do some jobs with a screwdriver whereas you might use a drill, right? And so different tools can do different jobs, and so we pick the ones that are best for us. So it could be a number of things. Obviously nowadays a lot of the excitement is around AI. I see a lot of potential there, obviously a lot to make us nervous as well, and I want to own that as well. I think the one I'm most excited about in the AI space is Magic School, because it's just such an approachable version of AI. It gives the teachers things that you can do. Like you can go do these things with ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini, the leading generative AI tools, but in those tools you have to go like, I want you to write me a lesson plan and I want you to use this format and I want you to include this thing. You have to tell it all that. Whereas Magic School's like it's already built into it. So it is AI, but it's got this kind of menu of options built. So I think that's a really great spot to start with AI. And then there's just so many other amazing tools out there. But I think that's if we're not paying attention to AI right now, I think we're doing our learners a disservice and us too, because it helps us.
I agree. And that has been a push in a lot of the schools that I work with. They want at least an introduction to their teachers of
Yeah.
AI, not only
Mhm.
for how it can be used in their teaching, but also how they can be used in their planning, which
Yeah.
is, like you said, it's a great thing when it has a format already available to you.
Yeah.
I also noticed that there are some learning management systems that have AI built in now that
Hmm.
help you with creating lesson plans and addressing DOK levels and that type of thing. Have you run across any learning management systems that do that?
The only one I'm familiar with so far is Google Classroom having Gemini built in, and I think that's only on certain versions of the account. If you're a paid Google district versus if you're not, they've built that in. It does some of those things you're mentioning, like lesson plans and things like that. I'm not sure of the other ones, but what I tend to do is I like there's so much ed tech for me to keep up with, so I'm almost like it's almost like a last in, first out kind of thing. I don't know, like right now I'm like catching up on what Pear Deck just added, and like next I'll get to something else, and sooner or later I'm gonna go like, what has Schoology added over the last 6 months, or what has Canvas added? So I'm confident that they have added these things. Everybody's adding them
Right.
because the way that these tools work is they're also APIs, which for the non-tech person that means that any other tool can pay or sign up or whatever to use that tool inside of it. So when a tool like I don't know, Canva says they have AI, which they have some great AI built in. They're really using, I assume, I don't know for Canva, but for example's sake, they're using somebody else's AI tool just built into theirs. So that's why we see all the other tools adding it, because why wouldn't they? You know?
Right. Well, you actually answered one of my questions. I was thinking there's so much tech out there. How do you stay up on everything?
Yeah,
Because it changes so fast. It's truly
it
amazing.
does.
So, how
Yeah.
much time do you spend searching and doing the research for what you do?
Not as much as I used to, which means I'm not as up with it as I used to be. It's something that I finally had to kind of admit to myself, like I'll never be able to keep up with all of it. I've got to prioritize my own well-being and my own sanity first. I've got to like I can't skip my son's basketball game to research what's happening in Canva right now. I just do it when I can. It's right now, it's probably a couple hours a week looking into this stuff. It used to be a lot more than that. And back in the day, it used to be so easy because maybe, I don't know, 8 years ago, there was only really one social media platform for teachers, and that was Twitter back in the day. I mean, there were others that had a little small, share of the market of teachers, but really all the ed tech news and EDU news and the sharing of things was happening on Twitter. So I could just go through my Twitter feed, and that's where I really gained all my news was from there. Nowadays, it's so fragmented. It's on Twitter and it's on Instagram and it's on TikTok and it's on Blue Sky and it's on all the things. I think my recommendation to teachers who are like, I want to keep up with this stuff is either A, you've just got to find a person to curate it for you. Like I try to be that person. I can't keep up as well as I'd like to. Also here in Ohio, Eric Kurtz is amazing at curating all that information. I don't know how he finds the time to do the stuff he does, but there are plenty of people like that. So that's one option. The other is those tools that you care about, subscribe to their newsletters because most of them they'll send those newsletters and sometimes they're promoting something that's not news. But if something new comes out, it's in that newsletter. I don't want another email in my inbox, but those ones are helpful when it's a tool I care about.
Well, I was following you on X for the longest time to get my updates. So I
Yeah.
noticed in your last newsletter you are talking about Blue Sky now. And I have
Yeah.
actually moved over to Blue Sky as well. Not totally, but it's a step. Are you finding good things on the Blue Sky? I think they have, what is it? Hashtag EduSky or something like that.
EduSky,
Yeah.
yeah, EDU Sky, yeah, that's kind of the hashtag to follow other educators. What it reminds me of is Twitter 11 years ago. The excitement when it was first starting out was all the people shifting over to there. I feel like maybe it's plateaued over the last week or so and is slow, maybe not quite plateaued, but is slowing down in its growth. I don't know. That's not based on statistics. That's just based on my observation. But the crazy thing is, if I go back to my X account or Twitter account, I've got 50 times as many followers on there technically. Now, a lot of those people are no longer online. If I post something on Twitter or X, and then I post the same thing on Blue Sky, I'm going to get 2 or 3 times the interaction from people on Blue Sky that I'm getting on Twitter. Yet it's 1/50th of the number of followers.
Oh,
So I
wow.
know that the people that are there might be less people there. They're much more involved, and they're much more involved, I think, because they're not like X got to the point for me where you came on and you were no longer seeing Eric Kurtz and Matt Miller and Jennifer Gonzalez at the top of your feed. You were seeing whatever the X algorithm told them was going to drive the most clicks and the most interactions. And I didn't want to see that stuff. Oftentimes, sometimes it was just garbage and it didn't matter. And sometimes it was incendiary in one way or the other. So I think a lot of teachers now, I got to the point where I didn't want to open the app because I didn't want to see what came up when I first opened it. And so I think a lot of people that have shifted over to Blue Sky are noticing that when they open, they're not confronted with that stuff. Now it's still social media, so stuff's still there, but there's no longer an algorithm pushing it on you. So it's nice and I'm excited about it. And it's nice to have a place where I could put out a question and people answer it. I'm like, yes,
Right.
the talking is back on social media,
Yes.
which is great.
That's exactly why I switched over. It wasn't anything political or anything like that. It was simply the fact that I didn't want to see what they were giving me. It was that
Yeah.
simple.
Yeah.
So I totally agree with that, and I think that the more that we get that word out, the more people will be there that are there for the
Yeah.
right reason. So
Yeah.
with all that you just said, you mentioned Eric Kurtz, which Eric and I have crossed paths as well. Who else should
Yeah.
we be looking at in this field of educational technology? Because you mentioned a few names there when you were going through.
Yeah. So I mentioned Eric. He's just so good, especially if you're in the Google space. He's the best curator of information about Google for education, but other tech as well. Matt Miller has a great newsletter. Ditch That Textbook is his website,
Hmm.
and he does a great job. He also understands teachers, and you could tell like he's like you almost feel like he's sitting at his teacher desk when he's writing the emails. I think he was back in the classroom last year and he's back out this year potentially, but he understands teachers when he emails. So I like his. I think the best part about it though is that you can find a person who fits your style or your needs or the way you like to get your news. There are so many great ones out there. Casey Bell, Jennifer Gonzalez, Monica Burns. I could pull out a whole list. Holly Clark. There's all so many people that are doing amazing work. But you could just pick the one that talks about the kinds of tools you like to talk about. Does it in the way you like. Maybe you like podcasts. Maybe you like videos. Maybe you like Blue Sky. Maybe you want a newsletter. That person exists, and and that's the great part is that there's just so many options for getting your news and your recommendations on best practices there.
And that's, I think, a good point. Teachers get overwhelmed by having so many options. They just don't even know where to start. So a lot of them do not.
Yeah,
And that's not just the case in technology. That's the case when you're looking at good teaching methods. And do I use Hattie or Bloom or,
yeah,
so I think that that's a very good
yeah,
point. Just pick your path and go and feel what's comfortable and do what's best for kids. As long as you keep those
yeah,
things in mind, I think you're going to be
yeah,
fine. All right. So
yeah. I agree.
your book has been out for how many years now?
I think it was 3.5 ago, but I'm not sure. I
So
should be keeping better track.
no, you don't need to. So if you haven't read Jake's book, it is a great resource for anybody looking at the ed tech space. And your podcast can be found on anywhere you can find podcasts. So wherever you're looking, look for his information there. And I want to turn
Yeah,
the other side of your career, which is the personalized learning specialist. Um, I get a lot of questions
yeah.
about this. So could you explain what personalized learning is, and then the work that you're doing with it?
Yeah, I started doing work in personalized learning about 2.5 years ago. It was something that I didn't know a whole lot about when I started on it. I knew it aligned to my values for what I wanted education to be, but I really couldn't have gone into too much detail about it. We were lucky here in the state of Ohio to have grant funding through some funds that were available at the time to fund 10 personalized learning specialist positions in the state. And I was lucky to get one of those positions through an educational service center. I've never learned more in 2 years. I learned so much through that work. Both the work we were guided by Knowledge Works, who's a great organization in the personalized or competency-based learning space. Learned so much from the people at Knowledge Works, learned so much from the other personalized learning specialists, but then learned a lot from working with other teachers and schools and things like that and collaborating with them. That grant funding unfortunately went away. It was a 2 year long grant, but I still get to do that through other funding sources through my two educational service centers, which is great. And it's because the districts doing the work with us saw it as impactful in the classroom and wanted to keep it going, and which I think speaks to the value of it. It was something that they wanted to, even once the grant funding was gone, it was something they wanted to continue with. Um, so the second part of the question is what when we say personalized learning, what do we mean? My story, my anecdote that I always give to explain it, I'm an anecdote guy, is here at the Miller household. One of our common dinner nights here, which we just had 2 nights ago, is salad night. Right. So back when I was growing up, my mom, who was a teacher for 41 years, I believe, great cook, she made some amazing casseroles. I thought they were delicious. The problem was everybody got the same casserole on their plate. Like when she made tuna noodle casserole, if you didn't like peas, too bad. It's baked into the casserole. Like you could pick them out as you go, but you really don't have a whole lot of control over whether you're getting the things. It's a one size fits all meal. And sometimes in my classroom as a math teacher, I was a one size fits all teacher. I was doing that one size really well, just like my mom made that casserole really well, but it was one size fits all. Um, then another metaphor would be where you go somewhere and everybody gets their own meal made for them, right? We're making their own meal. So like the chef is making, here's a meal for you, Norm. Here's a meal for you, Jake. That's a lot of work on the chef's shoulders, right? We don't want the chef to have to do all of that work. I would call that individualized instruction, where the chef, the teacher, is making something for each individual in the room. Personalized learning is more like we had salad night the other night, and on salad night, my wife or I, who's ever getting it ready, reaches into the fridge. We grab a bag of spinach. We grab a bag of lettuce. We open them both up. We set them on the counter. We reach in. We grab the Aldi chicken fingers. We put those in the air fryer. We grab a bag of pepperoni and set that out. Grab a cucumber and a tomato and some olives and cut them up. Put out some cheese. Put out a couple salad dressings, and then say to our kids, "Dinner's ready. Make your salad." And so what's personalized about it is we understand the needs of the diners in our house. We understand that my daughter prefers spinach. We understand that my son really prefers Hidden Valley Ranch over the less expensive Aldi Ranch, so we have that out for him. We understand that my other son really likes pepperoni on his salad, as do I, right? So we understand the needs of the people in our classroom, but that doesn't mean that I'm making their salad for them. So it's personalized because the person is making it for themselves. So we understand them and make the environment flexible to meet their needs, but we expect them to do the work to meet it. I could make each of their salads and hand it to them, but that'd be a lot of work on my shoulders. And then I would end up with kids who, when they graduated and went off to live on their own, wouldn't know how to make a salad, right? And I want them to be able to make their salad someday. And one thing teachers, when we start talking about the practices that are personalized learning, they're always worried, but like, yeah, but what if they make bad choices? Or what if they don't learn as much? Or what if they do it wrong? Or what if it takes some extra time? And I think that's right. I mean, that's understandable because sometimes my kids make themselves too much salad or not enough salad, or my daughter likes to have strawberries on her salad, but then if she puts ranch on it, those two things don't go well together, right? The benefit of that is that someday when she goes to make a salad for herself, she's going to know not to mix strawberries and ranch. She's going to know how much salad to put on her plate. She's going to know what kinds of things she likes. She's going to be prepared to make her salad, right? And now salads are a pretty easy example, but we want learners who go off to higher grades and then maybe higher education and then careers, knowing how they learn best, knowing how they're successful, knowing what barriers there are to their learning, knowing how to get around them, knowing what paths they want to go to. You think about how many kids graduate from high school not really knowing what they want to do with their future. They're just going to college because that's what everybody says you're supposed to do. They don't even know what they're going to study, right? And so the goal is to really hone in on who they are as a learner and help them have the agency to do things for themselves. Now, it can't always happen. You know, some nights when we're having steak, like they can't grill their own steaks. Like that's just inefficient. And I'm going to do it best, right? So I make the steak for everybody. But one kid might put A1 sauce on it, which I think is why waste a good steak. And another kid might only have like a small amount of steak. We have different amounts of steak. So sometimes that looks different from another situation. Sometimes we have to make the meal for them. But personalized learning really is trying to get them to make their own salad as often as possible. We don't want the teacher making each kid's salad either. We don't want a casserole and we don't want a personal chef. We want an empowered learner that makes their own salad.
I love that. I love the way you explained it. And I think it answers my question. But the question that I get all the time is how is that different than differentiation?
Right. What I've taken to saying is that differentiation, I think they're not different. They go hand in hand. I think a teacher who doesn't already differentiate can't really personalize. But to me, the easiest way, this oversimplifies it, but the easiest way to think about it is differentiation is me honoring the fact that I have kids who like spinach and kids who like lettuce and putting and making both of those options. Personalization is having them do it themselves. To me, differentiation could just be me going, Parker, that's my daughter. Here's your salad with spinach. Beckett, that's my youngest son. Here's your salad with lettuce. That's differentiation, and that's a good practice because now my daughter's going to eat more, right? And now they're honored as individuals. So differentiation is a good practice. Personalization takes it a step further and says, make your own salad, which is better for the teacher, I think, too.
Without a doubt. And that's the time crunch. I think differentiation can be a time suck on a lot of things. And it's
Hmm.
really a this way is much better because of the responsibility it builds with each student. And
Right.
going back to our statement about being overwhelmed, when a lot of schools that I work with, when I say differentiation and personalized learning, and then I bring in universal design, they're
Hmm.
because they have a basic knowledge of each, they really can't see the
Yep.
differentiation between those terms. So
Hmm.
those are, I think that's a your explanation really helps set the right picture for what this is. Awesome job.
Good. Good. No, thank you. And I think that universal design for learning, to that point, you really could use the same metaphor for that because if my son decides he wants to eat spinach tonight, okay, fine, spinach is out. I've identified a specific need for my daughter that she prefers spinach, and so I put that out for everybody to access. It's universally designed. I thought about an individual, and actually a better example, she doesn't eat red meat, so that's why we have to have the chicken as one of the protein options. So that's a specific, she's the furthest from being able to access the meal if I just put out pepperoni as the meat, or bacon as the meat to put on your salad, or taco meat as the meat to put on your salad. I need to think about her mindfully. So I make chicken tenders, or my wife makes chicken tenders. But then everybody's like, yeah, chicken tenders are delicious, right? So my sons are perfectly happy to have it. They didn't need that to be the option, but they love them. So that's universal design for learning right there too, where I thought about the person furthest from accessing or from success in whatever it is, designed for that person, and then gave it to everybody. And I think, and again, an oversimplification, a lot of the times when we think about differentiation, we go, everybody here's ground beef taco meat for on your salad. And then you go to your daughter and go, here's a salad with chicken tenders on it. And so we're honoring the differences, but sometimes we're doing the work for them. That's not always true. And if you read like a Rick Wormely book or something like that, he's gonna side more. He's gonna call it differentiation, but be closer to what I'd classify as personalization. And to me, the naming structure and what we call it matters less than what we're doing for the kids, and that's what's really important.
Well, that's honestly the hardest part for me in this new role is when somebody would say, "Hey, we're going to do a jigsaw method." And I'm going,
Yeah.
I'm not sure what that is. But then when I saw it, I go, "Oh, I do that all the time." Just didn't call it that.
Yeah.
So you're
Right.
right. In name, as long as you're doing the right thing, you're going to be
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Um, I would think the personalized learning would also lend itself very well to special needs and your
Mm.
gifted kids in a full inclusive classroom. Have you seen a
Yeah.
lot of success in that method with a full inclusive classroom?
Yeah, and it's really I think of personalization mostly being a tier one strategy. So these are the things that sometimes are avoiding the need for tier two strategies. A lot of the times our learners who end up needing some kind of tier two intervention, when they can have their needs met in a different way. Like for example, a kid who's struggling in science class because of maybe their reading level, they're going to need some tier two instruction because they can't read the textbook or not effectively, can't comprehend it. If we think about things from a universal design for learning point of view or from a personalized learning point of view, we might offer an audiobook version, or we might offer a version where we've used AI to rewrite the text at a lower reading level. We've done something that's going to model this for the kid, and that leads to them not even needing that tier two support. And that's not always going to happen, but it does trim down what we need. And the other thing too is we really want to lead to empowered learners, right? And oftentimes those learners who need extra supports in the special education population become less empowered, less excited about learning. That's not always true. And there's some amazing teachers out there doing amazing things, but in general, that's the case. And then for the gifted students, a lot of the times we see the way our schools are designed and have been for the last 120 years is as it's a comparative race to get the grade. It's with the goal of scholarships and high successes and high GPAs in college. And a lot of gifted kids fall into that trap and don't care as much about the learning as they care about that extrinsic motivator. And the goal is that by helping them know themselves as learners and know their interests and make choices and use their voice in their learning and things like that, they're more empowered and more motivated, able to go deeper and further, but also do it from an intrinsically motivated point of view, or at least a more internal locus of control of their motivation and what they do. So yeah, definitely helps all populations. And I think what it also does nicely once you get over maybe the difficult period as you start up into it, is that it helps learners see that they all have different needs and different skills and that they're strong at some things and weak at others, and not feel like they're judging each other for it, right? Like
Right.
if you really can get into this and really, really implement it, it's just normalized to say, I need help on this, or I learn best this way, or this class is difficult for me, but this class is easy for me. And that takes a little bit of the I don't know, kind of awkwardness out of those labels that we tend to put on kids.
A big part of differentiation and personalized learning is the feedback that you're able to give kids. And because they're
Mm,
all working on different levels at different times, how do
mhm.
you go about the proper feedback one-on-one with kids in a classroom setting?
Yeah, so feedback is one of the biggest pieces of personalized learning because we want them setting goals, we want them making choices, and we want them driving their learning. But that's hard to do if they're not getting feedback from their teacher that they can act on. I know in my math classroom back in the day or my science classroom, the feedback was a completion grade at the top of their homework and a percentage score at the top of their tests, and that's not actionable, right? And so it's got to be actionable. It's got to be more formative. It's got to happen more often and more bite-sized so that they can act on it. That's really what drives it. And so that feedback, when possible, should be happening side by side in a classroom. The nice thing is, so some teachers do what I would classify as good personalized learning practices, but they have all kids working at the same pace. And that's okay. That's great. Maybe they're leaning more into we're all doing things at the same pace, but we're doing them in different ways. Or maybe we're all doing things at the same pace, but we're all choosing our own topic to make it more relevant to us. But when a teacher does let them work at their own pace, what happens is the teacher is no longer tethered to the front of the room. They no longer have to stay within 10 feet of the smartboard. They can move around the room and support learners. Once we give learners that agency and once they build their capacity to use it, that takes time. But once they're able to actively actually work on their own, that frees the teacher up to give some of that feedback. Sometimes there's some things they have to do, but if everybody's working independently on something, we could pull a small group and do some really targeted instruction with them. We could pull up one kid and give them some feedback. And so I think putting these practices in place allow us to do some of those things one-on-one or small group with kids that could be really impactful. Because if I can give you in a small dose some feedback on something you need to work on, then you can go and work on that. And you value that feedback in a different way because it's pointed, it's actionable. We're working in a classroom that's based on skill growth, skill development, and I'm giving you some feedback that's going to support you with that rather than just you got a 94% on this test, you know?
Right. So, and I love that because when you start looking at how to, teachers don't believe this a lot of times when I say it, but once you are meeting kids at their level, they become so much more
Yeah.
independent. And
Yeah.
they almost had to see it to believe it, but when they see it,
Yeah.
it's so powerful. And it's a
Hmm.
good step, but it's that first step that they're afraid to take. So if we have a teacher that's listening to this that's interested in personalized learning, where should they start?
Well, there's a lot of different options out there. Through the work that funded the position I was in, that was through the Ohio Department of Education and Workforce. And so there is a framework up on the Ohio Department of Education and Workforce site that was developed by myself and the other specialists and Knowledge Works and some folks from the department and vetted by a lot of different people. So that framework is up there. They could see what's involved in it. There's some case studies listed there. So lots of good recommendations there. And that would be a wonderful place to look. If they want to go deeper further, kind of in other directions, I love the work of the Aurora Institute, which used to be Ina Cole, I believe, the Aurora Institute. I believe that was her old name. Knowledge Works is the group that I mentioned earlier. They do great stuff too. And there's some other podcasts and stuff like that out there that I listen to that are really good. One from South Carolina called Making It Personal, Making It Personal, a
I
personalized
like
SC podcast. Yeah, so lots of different options out there, or they could just reach out to me and I could point them in wherever they want to go and help them find that information.
that is the most daunting piece is how to
Yeah.
start, where to start. And I have visited that site and I've given that site out to other teachers that they are currently exploring the
Hmm.
possibilities. So it's going to be interesting
Yeah.
to find out where they end up. Are there any
Yeah.
schools in this Northeast Ohio area that are currently implementing this type of learning, K-12 that we could go look at, or is there other schools that are on that pilot stage? Where are some of the schools at around here?
So there are a lot. There are a lot. It's just how much how whether it's pockets of amazingness with personalized learning or district wide or building wide. And a lot of them came out of the work that we did. So that personalized learning network we had, I don't have the number in front of us, but something like 120 different schools statewide sending teams into this work. That's an estimate of the number, but it was a large number of schools working on it. Some of them have continued working on it and are doing really amazing things. When we started, we looked at some of the experts in Ohio. So you look at a school like Mason down near Kings Island. I saw some amazing things in Mason schools. They were years ahead of us in this work. Reynoldsburg and Marysville, both near Columbus. Um, I've heard amazing things kind of up in our neck of the woods, Norm, of the um, it used to be, I'm blanking on the name of the STEM school in Rootstown. I was just talking to Annette Lang works there. What is that called?
Oh, it's
It's
the
it's the one
medical
that's
school.
associated with Neomed. Yeah,
Oh, yeah,
associated
yeah,
with
yeah.
Neomed, but this um Neo is it NeoSTEM? No, it's not. Whatever that school
We
is, it's in
yeah,
Rootstown.
it's down in
That's a
Rootstown.
big
There are
deal.
many things in
Right.
Rootstown, so you'll find it.
That's true. Just get off the exit off the highway. It's right around there.
Yeah, you'll find it.
They do great work there. We also went to Dayton Regional STEM School down in the Dayton area, and they're great. But those are some of the folks who were kind of experts in this years ago, right? And have been exemplars. Mayfield also at their high school with their program, The Option, and some of the other cool things they have there do some really cool things. Nowadays, some of the schools that I'm working with that I'm really proud of the work they're doing. Chagrin Falls. I spent a lot of time working with Chagrin Falls, and they're doing amazing stuff. Um, District wide with their district leadership team, with all of their buildings, implementing personalized learning. Riverside up in Paynesville is doing some great stuff. Perry, Talmadge, Field, and Twinsburg was involved actually in this work over the last few years. I haven't caught up with what they're doing now, but I know they were adding some courses to their high school that were kind of shaped from a personalized learning mindset. So lots of different examples.
So I'm just going to ask one more question and then we'll wrap this thing up. Can you give us one example of a lesson that you just love seeing that was a personalized learning type of lesson?
Oh gosh, that's hard. That's really
I
hard.
know.
Um,
Pick one and
what?
only one.
Yeah. I'm going to share one thing that in that Chagrin Falls school district where I've worked a lot with them, one of the teachers who's now an instructional coach, I don't know if it was a year ago or 2 years ago, she was having a hard time figuring out how she wanted to start implementing personalized learning, which you alluded to earlier. You start this work and you go like, you look at some of those schools like I just listed, and if you go observe their classrooms, you're like, whoa, this is so much. There's so much is happening. This is such a shift I could picture it now, but it's such a shift from what I do. Or if you look at that framework on the website, there's so much in there. And so you just got to pick a spot to start. And that's what we keep telling everybody, is just pick a spot to start. Like, what can you give kids ownership of? Or what can you give them choice over? And so she was thinking, she was a third grade teacher at the time, what she could do. And what she ended up trying is she figured, what's a kind of a low risk thing to change? She let the kids plan their holiday party before the winter break a couple years ago. She really facilitated it. She facilitated some group conversations with the class. What kinds of things we want to go do, and they kind of voted, and they did some affinity mapping, and they organized, and had some discussions, and they split up into groups, and they took on different things, and they organized their whole class party for the winter break. Took it off her plate, gave them some agency, and then what she realized is, look at what they're capable of. Like they could plan a party. Like if they could plan a party, they certainly could plan how they're going to read a book, or like how they're going to do this project, or how they're going to show their learning of fractions, right? And so it was a kind of a low risk thing to try. And then she tried things like, well, I'm going to let them choose what they do for their brain breaks. And they did that, and it wasn't chaos. And she's like, these kids, look at what they're capable of. And so finding anytime you could find a little way to give the kids some of the ownership, which is good news for us, take it off of our shoulders, give them some of the ownership, they'll impress you. And then you'll start to see ideas of like, oh, if I could do that, I bet they could do some other things too. What else could I try? So I think that's a really good way to start. And it doesn't have to be as big as a party. It could just be, choice over like what happens during morning meeting or like dismissal time, or who knows. Pick something and give some choice over.
Love that. So was there anything you'd like to plug before we wrap it up here, Jake? Anything new on the horizon for you?
Well, I'm trying my best to do the Educational Duct Tape podcast every week, so I'd love to have people join me over there to hear that, as you mentioned, on any network they want. I'm really, really excited about an episode that's going to come out the week after you and I are recording this, which is with a gentleman who we talk about teaching AI. I'm sorry, teaching writing, teaching and assessing writing in the age of AI. Um, and it's really, really good. It's with a guy named Adam Sparks, who was in the classroom. He now runs a company, or he's the CEO of a web tool called Short Answer, which is a really great tool as well. But the interview was not focused on that. We talk about his recommendations for best practices for teaching AI or teaching writing in the age of AI. And if you don't believe it's going to be good, one of his advisors at his company that he meets with regularly is Dylan Williams. So if the guy is meeting with Dylan Williams regularly, we know that he's in the right space. And
Exactly.
if anybody
Yes.
out there listening is like, I don't know who Dylan Williams is, go Google Dylan Williams and you'll be like, okay, all right, we can trust this guy.
I will be tuned in. That's great.
Yeah.
So I would like to thank you for such a great discussion and all the work you do for all the teachers and all over the world of education. Remember to check out Jake's podcast, Educational Duct Tape, and the book of the same name. While you're at it, sign up for his newsletter at jakemiller.net, not .com, .net. And
Yeah.
also remember to subscribe to Educational Norm channel and contact me for information about myself or my guests at norm@normpotter.com and also at my website, structuredcreativityconsulting.com. So have a great week. And until next time, be kind, be professional, and find solutions. Thank you very much, Jake.
Thanks so much, Norm. Thanks, everybody.